not just about distribution, transportation, and logistics. Second point, this change is transformational. Procter & Gamble's been on this journey for 15 years, and they will tell you they're nowhere near done. Unilever's been on the journey for probably 7 years, and they're closer to the beginning than they are to the end. Companies like Nokia have tried to transform their supply chains. So the change is transformational. It's a multi-year journey, and I'm going to talk about stages of maturity because I think there's a very interesting correlation between maturity of leadership, and we'll hear a lot of that from the panelists, and how we think about supply chain change. And then the last point is I'm going to talk about the importance of goal alignment. And Pat is absolutely a specialist, and the others are all specialists in their own right in supply chain performance management around this issue of goal alignment. And Pat will introduce, as part of her introduction, some of the background and statements I make. So, very quickly, supply chains don't look like this anymore. This is the Procter & Gamble Chief Supply Chain Officer picture. From left to right, feed stuff in from suppliers, feed products out to customers with lots of breaks in between. Right? We all know we can't run supply chains like this anymore. There's waste, there's latency of information, there's delays, there's disconnects in processes. Second point, so if that's not what the supply chain looks like, what does the supply chain of the future look like, this end-to-end business operating strategy? So this is a model that when I was at AMR we developed with Procter & Gamble. Let me explain very quickly the three main components. And I'm going to talk about outside in, from manufacturing, at least from demand into manufacturing, and I'm going to talk inside out, product from manufacturing to the customer. So let's start off with inside out, a more traditional way of working. Blue is make stuff reliably. Red is about sales and operations planning, the group that is next door here. And green is about sales and marketing in front of the customer. That's outside in. We deployed ERP systems, order to cash. We planned stuff against forecasts, and we pushed out in the marketplace and relied on sales to sell. Well, that's not how Procter & Gamble, that is not how Dell, that is not how any of the supply chain transformation leaders are working. They're working outside in, which is from left to right. Get visibility of demand, sense demand changes as they're happening, translate those through sales and operations planning into reliable supply, make what's needed. That's an outside-in supply chain. That is what is Procter & Gamble. By the way, just an interesting number here. Procter & Gamble, over the last 14 years, took a $1 billion stock-out problem because they looked at it end-to-end. They gave the business back $3 billion. Why? Because when you solve the problem on the shelf and you look at all the processes going back into supply, you see all the other problems as well. Lastly, the three main components of this supply chain, which is now not traditional supply chain, but the business operating strategy, is made up of three very important components. There's the supply side, the blue circle, which is traditional manufacturing and supply. There's the red side, which is product and innovation. And there's the green side, which is demand. In other words, sales and marketing. The supply chain today, as P&G calls it, the consumer-driven supply network strategy, as AMR calls it, the demand-driven value network, is all those three pieces together. Now, here's the important piece, and this is why I think we're going to get some great insights from this panel today. What you see in there is people, process, and technology. Right? Next door, we have a great vertical part of the T talking about sales and operations planning driven by IT. We all know that supply chain end-to-end is very different. It involves people, it involves goal alignment, and those companies that have been on these long 10-year-plus journeys have really done a really great job of change management. We'll hear some of that in the panel. And lastly, I want to talk about stages of maturity of the journey. We all know that as we're transforming supply chains, this is not everybody's in exactly the same place. There are different cultures, even across your own business. Latin America may be different to Europe, may be different to North America. So let's say there's 5 stages of performance improvement and maturity. Stage 1, react to problems. Stage 2, we build projects around problems. Stage 3, we're driving for functional excellence. In other words, S&OP in stage 3 is balancing supply and demand. Then we get to stage 4, which is where Procter & Gamble are, and that's the end-to-end set of processes starting at the point at which the product's purchased. And then stage 5 is the value network. Now, the fundamental point, and I'm going to harp on this, is a really important slide for the panel discussion, and that is the change from stage 3 to stage 4 is very fundamental. It goes from vertically orientated processes to horizontally orientated processes. And this is where the new change leadership and the new style of performance management and changing the mental model of the organization, which we can hear Pat talk about. Okay, so without any further ado, what I want to do, you know me, I'm Roddy Martin from CCI. I'm going to ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves, make a key point. We will discuss those key points after Anne has presented her key point. I'll ask them some questions, and they'll close up with a key point, and we'll take some questions from the audience. All right, so enough of me. Pat.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Pat McClagan, and I run a company called Goalstreams, which is a consulting company that's interested in helping track and manage horizontal goals. But I've been really working for 40 years as a transformation consultant, and I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of really big companies as they've been moving through their maturity development. And this meeting makes me think of back in the early 80s with GE. I helped them with their first global procurement conference. And their big issue was how to help procurement people stop beating up on their suppliers and to look at more than cost when they were making their purchases. So things have really come a long way, I think, since then. And I've had an opportunity to work on some other big transformation things. I have watched for 40 years organizations try to make the shift that Roddy was talking about from stage 3 to 4. It's a really big shift from the old mechanistic rational model of organization that says we break things into pieces in order to manage them, to a horizontal flow where partnerships, boundaries, and all of that are changing. And it seems to me that that supply chain now is dragging the final nail in the coffin of the old model. That now we finally have a part of the business that controls a lot of assets that's out there, especially when we think of it end-to-end, that requires the organization to shift to a more horizontal, partnering, network mode of operating. Now, why is that important for this particular discussion? It's because, and I don't want to make the stereotypes too heavy here, because I think we all get in trouble when we do that. But the old model organization is basically a traditionally masculine model. It's more top-down, think versus do, very rational, break things into pieces, very dominant power base. I'm not saying men are like that or women are sometimes like that or whatever, but the model of organization is traditionally more left-brain. And now we're moving, as we move into this more horizontal, we're needing to draw on the qualities that are more typically associated with right brain, with things that women traditionally are considered to be better at. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. But we're having a difficult time making that shift. I do think that supply chain, though, because it's finally the force that's going to drive the organizations to make this fundamental change finally. And I hope it will happen while I'm still alive. But I think that those of you who are here are really participating in a major change. But we have some big challenges because we still have organizations operating in a way that doesn't support horizontal, integrated, customer-focused, outside-in kind of thinking. And I'm hoping that as more women enter into the management arena related to supply chain and business as a whole, that we're going to see these qualities be brought in a much greater way. So, we can talk about that a little bit later, but, I'm also intrigued about why we have to change, but I think we can get into that later.
Good. So Pat makes the point in the preparation discussions we were doing earlier. Maria, who's going to talk next, made the point of we need more T-style people in supply chain roles. And I think that's very true. It's about diversity. It's also about training. Where do most supply chain operations people come from? Operations, research, engineering. So we're trained as vertical T thinkers, the vertical part of T thinkers. What do we need? Well, we're talking about horizontal processes. The flip from integrating vertically to integrating horizontal is fundamentally different. We've got to go across many organizational boundaries. You think about sales and operations planning. I've been to Samsung in Korea, and I've watched them run a sales and operations planning meeting. Let me tell you what it looks like. So they're an early stage 4 organization. They do a weekly S&OP for every SKU in the global business, and it's led by the CFO and the business unit president. Now, if any of you have any experience with S&OP, so that's absolutely impossible. I don't know how on earth you do that on a global basis. All they're doing is they're looking horizontally at what was predicted for demand, what are the exceptions to that demand plan, and is the supply capability there to do it. That's all they're doing in that weekly meeting. But it's horizontal thinking. They're sitting in a room with a control tower that has global visibility of all information. So they're thinking integratively about meeting the demand plan. So the point is, what you heard from Pat is that we need both sides of the T. We need the horizontal part of the T, and we need deep expertise in the functions. Because nobody is saying here that the vertical part of the T is not important. It's very important. But we've got to learn to integratively bring them all together. Okay, Maria. There we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Ray, and thank you, Roy, for inviting me here to this panel. Truly an honor to be here, and it's the first time I'm participating in a panel talking about women in supply chain transformation, and I think it's actually very exciting to see all of you here caring about that subject. My career is a combination of academics. I teach out of Georgia Tech supply chain strategy, and I have a PhD in performance management, and I also do consulting research independently. And my topic for the day, as I was preparing these remarks, is that transformation today in supply chains requires us to go beyond optimization. And I grew up and I was educated in the engineering school of optimization and how to optimize a function. And you still see that breathing through technology and the performance goals of particular business functions and functional processes in supply chain. But I think we are over-optimized. I think optimization has actually taken away things that are critical for supply chains to be competitive. And so I will say that optimization actually takes away some of the drive to innovate, because innovation requires investment and risk-taking, and that probably is counterintuitive with innovation. Secondly, I think, and this is where the diversity point comes, and I have to congratulate the organizers for the presentation from the Senior VP of Walgreens this morning, because what a lesson in diversity, what a lesson in integration, and a T-shaped view of that. So hopefully this session is more about diversity per se, rather than just putting more females in supply chain, because God knows we need more males in HR. So I think it's just a matter of diversity. So if transformation requires moving beyond optimization, we need to move into innovation in supply chain, which means we need different perspectives in supply chain. I would love to have people from sales and commercial working